Hi everybody! Thank you so much for tuning in to the very first episode of Steph's Stories and Crafts. I'm your host, Steph, and today on the show we will be reading a story called The Nice Monster. But before we get to the story, let's make some monsters of our own. For today's crafts, there are two options you can make. You can make a square-headed monster or a round-headed monster, depending on whether or not you have paper plates available to use. The supplies you will need for this craft is a paper cereal box, a single hole punch, markers, a ruler, brass fasteners, scissors, and there are a few other supplies that you don't necessarily need, but I would suggest if you have them. A paper cutter. This one is pretty child friendly, but definitely you still need some adult supervision with it. I also love to use googly eyes for my monsters. And if you do want to use the round head instead of the square, you'll need a 6-inch paper plate. Alright, are you ready to get started on your monster? Because I sure am. The first step is to take apart your cereal box. You want to open it on the top and the bottom, and then also on the side. Alright, so once you've got your box all opened up, it's time to start marking some lines. So take your ruler and line it up with one of the creases. And we're going to make 6 strips, all the same, all just the width of your ruler. Now what you're going to do is cut out your strips. Now, this part is great for small children who are learning to use scissors and practice their straight lines. So you can either cut them out with scissors, and you'll want to cut the folded bits off the bottom and the top as well. If you want this to go a little bit quicker and you have an appropriate sized paper cutter, you can go ahead and use that. However, my paper cutter is just a little too narrow and the box won't fit, so I do have to use the scissors. Some really little children may have trouble with cutting the cardboard just because it is thicker than paper, and that might be a little hard for their little hands, especially using the dulled down kitty scissors. So this might be a part where mom or dad or whomever is helping the kiddo out with the project needs to step in and lend a hand. And for the last one, just cut right on the fold. If you're having your kid do this and you think they might forget, make sure they just line all sides. That's totally great too. And you'll see that we only used one side of the box. So one cereal box, if you're using the paper plate heads, can make 2 dragons. Otherwise, one of these boxes usually makes about 1.5 dragons if you're using the box for the head as well, which I will show you as well. So once you have your strips all cut, fold them in half so that the ends meet and pinch down the edges. Pinch them in really hard so that they stay folded. Now you can fold them so that the colored side is out if that's the look you want for your dragon. I prefer to decorate them my dragon myself, so I fold it so that the plain cardboard side faces out. Alright, so you're going to fold each of your 6 strips in half. Just like so. And once you've got your 6 strips folded in half, it's time to take out your single hole punch. Now again, this part is a bit more difficult as you're going through 2 layers of the cardboard with the hole punch. So again, this might be a time when the adult needs to step in and lend a hand. Each of your strips needs 1 hole on each end and 1 in the middle. Like so. So give all of your strips 3 holes, as evenly spaced as you can get. It doesn't have to be exact. Now it's time to take out a small handful of brads and start connecting your strips. So take 2 strips and lay them across each other so they make an X. You can also do it so that just all of the holes match up, but the only hole that needs to be matched up are the 2 middle holes. So make sure it looks like that. And stick your brad through and fold it down. Now, my brads are a little long, and so when you fold them, they kind of stick out on the sides. So what I like to do is just fold them back a little bit. But if the brad sticking out doesn't bother you, totally fine to leave them. Also, if you're using scrapbook brads, those tend to be a bit smaller and you won't need to fold them twice. Now make another X and do the same thing. And with your last 2 strips, make a 3rd X and attach them together with a brad, just like you did before. So, now that you have your 3 X's, it's time to connect them to each other. So take 2 X's and put them together so that 2 of the end strips match up, like so. And then you're just going to take a brad for each side and push it through and fold the tabs back once again. And then you just take your 3rd X and attach it to just the same way you did the other 2 together. Attach it to one of the 2 X's that have already been attached. So now you have all 3 X's attached to each other. And you can feel how the body of your dragon will move. Now I'm going to show you the 2 versions of making your dragon's head. To start out with, I'm going to show you the paper plate version. So you take a 6-inch paper plate, and you can either use your ruler or freehand this, and just draw a straight line about halfway across your plate, and then make some giant teeth with some zigzags. And now, all you have to do is cut out the teeth, just like so. This can be tricky for smaller kids, but I find that they often like to try to do it themselves. But if they want some help, that's totally fine too. There is no problem with asking for help. So once you've got it all cut out, you can draw on your dragon's eye, or if you have googly eyes, you can use those as well. For now, I'm just going to give this guy a bright green eye. Alright, and once that is done, it's time to attach the head to the body. So take your head and your body and squish your body as closed as you want as it can go, And then lay the head on top in a way that the mouth is as closed as you want it to be. Now, for the next step, you're going to take a stapler and just staple the head. Now, if you don't have a paper plate, that is totally fine. You can make a head out of the other half of your box. Take your ruler, lay it against the fold, and then you can mark it right there on each end, and then you're going to flip it over on itself because we're trying to make this piece twice as wide as our normal pieces. So once you flipped it over twice, you can draw your line. Now for this piece, we're going to be using the part we just measured from the fold up as the top of the head, and then from the fold down, the side piece here is going to be the bottom of the mouth. So go ahead and just cut out those pieces. And like before, you'll want to cut the floppy bits off the top and bottom. And then cut them apart just along the line of the fold there. If you need to take a marker to it and draw that line more vividly so you can see it better, that's totally fine. You're going to take your head pieces and fold them in half just like we did before. Lay your head pieces together. Maybe draw out where you want some teeth. I'm going to give this guy some smaller teeth than the other guy I made. And now you just come in and you snip away little pieces. You can also, if you want, you can also leave the two parts of the head together until you cut out the teeth. That's fine too. It just gives you a different kind of tooth. And once you've got your teeth done, chomp chomp chomp, you can go ahead and add your googly eyes or drawn on eyes, whichever you are using. For this monster, I'm going to use googly eyes. Which, if you have the peel and stick kind, you just peel off the back and stick it on. And if you don't, you use some glue. Ta-da! Alright, now that the head is made, we're going to attach it the same way that we attached the paper plate head. Just placing it down and stapling it on. Easy peasy. And there you go. A two-headed monster. Ah! Now, of course, you don't have to give your monster two heads. I just did that for demonstration purposes, but you certainly can have a two-headed monster. You can also go through and use your markers or glitter glue or stickers or whatever you want and just go crazy and decorate the body and the heads of your dragons. Or monsters. They don't have to be dragons. These two that I made earlier, I decorated. This one is all pink and purple, and this guy is all orange and green. You just use whatever colors suit your fancy, or whatever colors you think your dragon or monster of any type would want to wear. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed making your monsters as much as I enjoyed showing you how. And Now it's time to hear the nice monster. Shall we? Alright everybody, now that we have finished making our very own nice monsters, let's hear all about this one. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a small village in the valley of Urig Mountain. And at the top of that mountain, legend told that there was a stream of pure gold. And though the village was full of gold miners, no one had ever harvested gold from the top of that mountain. For at the top of that mountain, there was a great beastly dragon. And anyone who went to the top of the mountain had to face him. Many tried, but none ever came back. For many generations, the dragon and the villagers lived side by side quite peacefully. For as long as the villagers stayed below the Manxie Plateau, while the dragon would stay above it. But one year, the villagers got upset, and they thought, hey, shouldn't we be able to harvest gold wherever we please? So they decided that the only thing to do was to get rid of the dragon, because then they could harvest all the gold they wanted. Getting rid of the dragon isn't such an easy task. And it's not like they could have just asked him nicely. Well, I suppose they could have and possibly they should have, but that's not what they did. Each man in the village took up arms to fight against the dragon and try and throw him off the mountain and get rid of him forever. But that didn't work. Many men were lost in the great war against the dragon, until they were all forced to retreat. Now that's not where our story takes place. Our story takes place years and years and years and years and years later, when nobody believes that there really is a great beastly dragon at the top of the mountain. Well, nobody but little Logan. Little Logan believes wholeheartedly that there is a dragon up there, even though the only people that she hears talk about the dragon are, well, her grandparents and other people's grandparents and other little kids. Most grown-ups just chuckle it off when she says anything about the dragon, and most big kids scoff at her and say, "There is no dragon. Stop believing in fairy tales." But that doesn't stop little Logan from believing. Because little Logan has dreams almost every night that after the whole village is asleep in their beds, she wakes up and from out her window she can see the dragon flying in the sky, and, well, she's not sure, but she thinks that might not be a dream. Then one day, the dragon came. He came slowly down the mountain, down to the Manxie Plateau. And some of the gold miners who had been working there, well, they saw him and they screamed in terror. "Oh no, not a dragon! Ah!" And many of them threw their picks at him and shovels and a great many things that they had to throw. And the rest, well, they just ran away. Everyone on the mountainside that day ran down to the village to warn their wives and children and families and friends and everyone in the village that the dragon was back. And so everyone was scared. Because what would this dragon want but to eat people, right? So they all took up wives, men, women, and some of the bigger children. And they said, "Hey, we're going to go up there. We're going to show that dragon who's boss, and we're going to get him off of our mountain once and for all." But little Logan didn't think that was quite right. Little Logan said, "Wait a minute. Don't you remember the stories? How we tried this before? How people fought the dragon and failed? How many people we lost? Don't you think there's got to be a better way? Don't you think that maybe if we just talked to the dragon, he'd understand why we're scared, and we could understand why he's come down? But the villagers thought, oh, that's foolish nonsense, kid stuff. The kid couldn't possibly think that we're going to talk to a dragon. Dragons can't talk, and if they could, they'd just say, I'm gonna eat you. So nobody listened to little Logan, and they all headed off up the mountain. But little Logan, being a small kid, could take ways that the grown-ups couldn't, especially in such a large number. She could sneak up that mountain faster than anyone else. And she did. And when she came to the Manxie Plateau, she snuck up behind a bush to watch the dragon to see what he was really doing there. And that's when she saw something that even she didn't expect. That's when she saw a great big tear rolling down the side of the dragon's face. And she said, "Why, what's wrong, Mr. Dragon?" And the dragon was so startled that anyone would be talking to him. But when she went to wipe his tear off his cheek, he was so comforted that he told her quite honestly, "Well, I'm quite lonely up on the top of my mountain, and no one ever comes to visit me anymore, and well, I thought I'd come down and make some friends, but when I got here, they just threw things at me and screamed. And that made me very sad. Oh, Mr. Dragon, I'm so sorry, but they said that you roared and blew flames at them, so maybe they were just scared too." "But I only roared and blew flames at them because they threw things at me first," said the dragon. "I know, and I'm very sorry that they did that to you, Mr. Dragon. And when they get here, I will have a strong talking to them about their behavior. But don't you worry. You will never feel lonely again because you will always have a friend in me." And oh, the monster, the dragon, was so excited to hear somebody call themselves his friend that he just couldn't help it, and he swept her up in his arms for a great big hug. And just then the villagers came, and they said, "Hey! Let go of her, you big old bully!" And little Logan turned round at them and smiled and said, "Please do not call my friend a bully, when really you're the bullies. You get mad at him for giving me a hug just because he looks different, because he seems like he's probably scary, when really he just wants some friends. Can't you imagine how lonely it must be for him? Up there on the top of that mountain all by himself. Nobody ever visits, nobody to talk to play games with, to tell stories to. He just wanted a friend. And you treated him like he was a monster, when you were the monsters." The villagers, well, they felt quite foolish that the wisest among them was a little girl who still believed in fairy tales. And the dragon was never lonesome again, as he had many friends in the village, and he was always welcome to come down past the Manxie Plateau and the villagers up above it. Alright everybody, that's all for today, but make sure to tune in soon for more stories and crafts here on Steph's Stories and Crafts.